Привіт, мій друзі. Привіт, мій друзі. Hello, my friends. It's day 340 in this war in Ukraine, and I'm going to try to help you look into the future and see what's coming down the line. And I'll show you how I think you can do that. So here's what I'm going to cover today. We're going to look at the headlines of how Russians are preparing for a long war. They really are. They're adjusting to it. They're expecting a long war. And how rationing sanctioned goods are going to be showing us how bad things are getting over time. We'll look at the ISW assessment. We'll look at how North Korea is denying that they're supplying the Wagner group. We'll look at how Russians report on each other. It's becoming more and more authoritarian, more and more Soviet over time. We'll look at how the U.S. has designated Wagner a transnational criminal organization. This just happened a couple of days ago. We'll look at the world's first crack UAV companies. They're forming now in Ukraine, and I've been saying again and again, they're the wave of the future. And then we'll also discuss Where's Waldo a little bit more today. Okay, here we go. Now, I've been saying for a while that the Russians are preparing for a long war. They're not thinking about going away. And here's just more evidence of this. In recent weeks, the Russian Ministry of Education has provided more detail on the rollout of previously announced plan to include basic military training in Russia's secondary school system. Think about that. They're providing basics of life safety course, which will include training with AK series assault rifles and hand grenades, military drill, salutes, and the use of personal protective equipment. Like that's being taught in high school moving forward. So they're thinking down line of how to get people to be trained ahead of time. The lessons will become mandatory from 1 September 2023. That means they're thinking about doing this basics of basic training in high school, and they're thinking long term. They're putting themselves on an industrial footing. They're thinking through all kinds of ways that they can shut down opposition in the public forum or public square. You just see sign after sign after sign that they are moving headlong this direction as an authoritarian regime trying desperately to get on a war footing to finish and conclude this war in their favor. They're not going anywhere. I'm convinced of it. Okay. Here, now this is really interesting. Sanctions, I talked about how sanctions alone don't make a difference, but sanctions can add up and have a difference. So here's how you can look into the future and see when the economy is starting to ail or start to be, the sanctions are starting to be felt. Since the beginning of 2023, Russian airlines have reported at least 7 incidents in which flights were disrupted, delayed, or canceled. Most were mechanical in nature. Okay, there are cracks are showing in Russian aviation industry. Why? Because they have to cannibalize planes. They can't get the parts. At least 9 Russian airlines stopped flying in 2022. 4 of them after national aviation regulator Rossvisia pulled their airworthiness certificates. Russian airlines have for months turned to cannibalization to maintain and perform upkeep on their fleets. In November, the Telegram channel Baza reported Aeroflot has cannibalized 25 planes for parts, and another 18 aircraft were under maintenance and awaiting repairs. Listen, Russian aircraft are going to go down eventually as the cannibalization continues and gets worse and worse. There'll be a plane that'll crash, and it'll be blamed not, I believe, on mechanical stuff because the Russians lie about it, but on pilot error. But when you start seeing airplanes crash, that's a big barometer of where they are and how their economy is going down. I don't know that it'll be anytime soon, but this kind of thing they can't sustain over time. A report published in November by the U.S. think tank, the RAND Corporation, found at least 6 crashes involving civilian and military aircraft in the 2 months prior. 4 were jet fighters, 2 were not, the report found. Same with their jets. They're having a hard time getting the parts that they need for their jets. This is going to be an index or an indicator of where the economy is and how badly it's not being able, because look, you got to buy and sell and trade and work with other countries and other companies in other countries in order to actually get where you're trying to be. Russia's trying to be, well, we're just going to be fully independent. It doesn't work that way. When you try to do everything in-house, it goes much slower. It's much worse. And I don't think they're going to be able to sustain that. When you see airplanes crashing, just tuck this away for a later day. You'll know that the economy is in very, very bad shape. Okay, here off to the ISW. The ISW, conventional Russian forces are likely replacing exhausted Wagner group forces to maintain the offensive in Bakhmut after Wagner group's offensive in Bakhmut culminated with the capture of Soledar. Okay, there's some contesting about the whole region, but Wagner's being moved out. Now, this is really interesting. Russian forces are attempting to prevent Ukraine from regaining the initiative, possibly ahead of a planned decisive Russian offensive in Donbass. So Valery Gerasimov stated on December 22nd, Russian forces are focusing most of their efforts on seizing Donetsk or maybe Luhansk, but nonetheless, what the Russians want to do is capture this ground and actually hold on to the full borders of Donetsk and Luhansk. Now they're spreading the Ukrainians thin along a 600 kilometer or mile, I don't remember which, border of the between the two warring nations, right, within Ukraine. And they're doing that because they want to spread them out so that they can't concentrate. But what Gerasimov, I think, wants to do, from everything I've read, is concentrate in either Donbass or Luhansk and actually capture this territory so that they can declare some kind of victory. Then they're going to want to negotiate. The localized attacks in Voldahar and settlements in Donetsk and Zaporizhia Oblast are intended to disperse Ukrainian troops, to move them, stretch them out across that line. I don't think the Ukrainians are unaware of this. Russian forces likely lack the combat power necessary to sustain more than one major offensive operation while fighting Ukrainians in western Donetsk and eastern Zaporizhia. So they're going to have to concentrate. They don't have enough to do it. I still think mobilization is on the way from everything that I'm reading, everything that I'm seeing. There's going to have to be another wave of mobilization if they're going to be able to continue. Whether that is before this next operation or after, I do not know. I can't. My crystal ball is too dim. But something is coming down the pike. The Russian military leadership may once again be planning an offensive operation based on the erroneous assumptions about the Russian military's capability. They're kind of drunk on their own, like, we're awesome kind of rhetoric, and they're not really realizing that they're not going to be able to sustain very much. But they're going to try again, and in trying, they'll probably take some land. I would argue that it's very likely that some real estate will change hands and become Russian in this process. But I don't know that that's a long-term thing. I think it'll be temporarily taken, and it'll be taken away somewhere else simultaneously. The Russians are thus very unlikely to achieve operational decisive success in their current and likely upcoming offensive operations, although they're very likely to make tactical and possibly even operationally significant gains. So they may take some ground, but it's not likely to be catastrophic for the Ukrainians. On the other hand, what's catastrophic is the position that Prigozhin finds himself in and the Wagner group. Prigozhin is likely sensing and is overcompensating for his declining influence and has therefore begun to attack nationalist veteran faction. So we are talking about what, in the last couple of days, him arguing with Gherkin and such. Prigozhin is also facing bribery accusations, which may further diminish his reputation regardless of their validity. Now, it doesn't matter if he does bribery as long as Putin backs him, right? I mean, it's not going to make a dime's worth of difference if Putin decides we're going to keep him in place. But if Putin decides to let the law actually apply to him, then he's in hot water. So he has to curry favor, and one of the ways of currying favor is to punch a guy that's punching at Putin. Prigozhin responded to a media inquiry on January 27th regarding speculations that he receives bribes from convicts who do not then serve on the front lines but still receive a pardon for their service. Now, is he corrupt? Yeah, no question about it. And it doesn't matter that he's corrupt, he just is. But it's if Putin decides that he's worthy or useful to continue or not, that's the difference. And now he can use the law, if this is a thing, he could use the law to put him away, or he can just keep him in service. The ISW cannot independently verify these bribery accusations against Prigozhin, but that is how you know that there's a quality article, when there's something that says this kind of thing, if they can or can't independently verify. So look at your sources. I'm tired of people that are putting things out on, like in my comments, they'll put things out and say, well, see, this proves that this. No, that's just some commentator talking about it. You shouldn't even trust me unless I can back what I'm saying or show you what I'm showing you. Don't just believe people because they say something. Anyone can say something. Okay, let's turn our attention here. This is what's going on with the requests for missiles and planes and things along those lines. Planes are coming, I'm pretty sure. I understand that there are planes, there are Ukrainians being trained on as pilots right now. I also understand, and now I can't show you this because I saw it on the news. I didn't see it in an article. I actually saw it on television news. 321 tanks. Like, so I've seen people say in the comments, well, you know, what good are a half dozen tanks going to do, or what good are a dozen or 14 or 30 or whatever? Doesn't matter. There's 321 tanks that have been promised to Ukraine as of right now. Now they're turning their attention to air power. And what's more important, I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, if you're military and you have a background, what's more important than the planes are the missiles, and that's being overlooked. Somebody said that the other day. With all the discussion about tanks, really what's important are the long-term or long-range missiles. I think they're right, but I think that's being obscured by the discussion about planes, not about tanks now. The long-term missiles, if they can have an effect, they can push the supply lines way back. Now, how far they can push them back, that's the question, but getting long-range missiles is going to be huge. Okay, here's fast-track talks underway for missiles and planes. We need to work with this. We must show our partners the real picture of this, Polodek said, without naming specific countries. We must speak reasonably and tell them, for example, this and this will reduce fatalities, this will reduce the burden on infrastructure, this will reduce security threats to the European continent, this will keep the war localized. That's right. He needs to make that case very well. I said the other day that what Trump had said the other day, and then how Biden had been acting. Putin has been very successful at deterring the West, including the United States, so far, where they've just been giving tanks and just starting to think about planes and right? So in the meantime, people have literally died because Putin has been successful with his threats. And so now we need to see this case laid out that if you supply this now, it will reduce the number of deaths. It will reduce the burden. It will keep the war in Ukraine and not spilling into other places. And that's the right tone that they need to strike. In the meantime, Zelensky was talking about this, how they need ATACMS, particularly. Ukraine needs long-range missiles, in particular, to remove the possibility of the occupiers place their missile launchers somewhere far from the front line and destroy Ukrainian cities with them. So if you can hit back, they might be a little less antsy. We will do everything we can to ensure that partners open up this vital supply, in particular, ATACMS and other weapons. Okay, and he talked about something else with sports and other things. That's not... Okay, so the sports thing is actually the Olympics thing. It's important because he's trying to keep the Ukraine story out there, but I'm not going to go into that right now. Okay, let me turn my attention over here, where North Korea is saying, we're not supplying Wagner with anything. Of course you are. Yeah, I mean, they lie and then they lie and then they lie. And when they lie, it's pretty clear what they're actually doing. The U.S. will face really undesirable results if it persists in spreading this self-made rumor. It's trying to tarnish the image of North Korea by how do you tarnish the image of North Korea? They're trying to tarnish the image of North Korea by fabricating a non-existent thing is a grave provocation that can never be allowed to stand, but trigger its a reaction. Okay. All right, so the headline here was North Korea denies arming Russia Wagner Group. They have intelligence. They know what's going on. So they've just been doing that. So this report is absolutely terrible. Russians report on their own children to police for opposing Putin's invasion. Like, this is Stalinist. This is Russia returning to the Soviet Union. A mother of three from the Siberian city of Novorossiysk told the Mail on Sunday, we are living in a Soviet hell with friends reporting friends to police, parents disowning their children. The level of heartache is very hard to describe. A father turns in their child, children turn in their teachers. It's disgusting that all this is encouraged, that the government encourages people to do this. In Siberia, a father is said to have informed on his son to the police for allegedly discrediting the Russian armed forces. You can go to jail for that or be fined for that. A 10-year-old schoolgirl in Moscow was taken from her classroom to a police station after the headmaster reported her for a social media profile picture with the colors of the Ukrainian flag. Pupils at other schools have reported their teachers for criticizing the war in Ukraine. The longer this goes on, the the worse it's going to be in Russia. So this is what you look at in the future. The more authoritarian the state gets, the more you're seeing how bad it's getting in the Soviet Union, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. The planes falling, the authoritarian nature, all these kind of tightening of controls are showing you not that they think everything is great, but that they think that things are worse and they have to do these kind of things. Okay, let's keep going. Now, this just happened a couple of days ago and I missed it. It was January 26th. It's the 29th today. U.S. lists Russian Wagner mercenary group as transnational criminal organization. Well, what does that mean? It means now you can sanction them because they're classified in this way, and they targeted individuals and entities within the Russian mercenary enterprises global network in line with this executive order, and so they're now deemed that way. Russia should be deemed that way, or deemed as some kind of terrorist state sponsor of terror or something along those lines. But it's pretty significant that they've done that. Now, let's keep going and look at the next article. The Ukrainian military repelled Russian attacks in 13 settlements in the Donetsk region. Wagner Group, designated by the United States as Transnational Criminal Organization, says that it's taking control of this city that I cannot pronounce, and I'm not going to try to pronounce it because my critics on here want to make a big thing about how I can't pronounce it. But Wagner is still very much in the mix. They're trying to make claims that they have taken this ground, or that they're showing, like, look what we're doing, because Prigozhin needs to make his name to be one of the big boys, one of Putin's dependable lieutenants, and he will be willing to sacrifice every member of Wagner for that if necessary, but that's what's happening. I don't know that he's going to make much more of a dent. This war of attrition that he's fighting has been terrible for the Wagner Group, but again, he's getting criminals from jail and others that are just mercenaries that he can expend. Okay, let's keep going. Let's shift gears. This I've been talking about for months on end. UAVs are unmanned aerial vehicles, drones. Drones are the wave of the future, and there is the first in the world unmanned aerial vehicle that's drone crack companies being formed. Now, you're going to need these, and when you have longer range missiles, these are going to be even more important to help you kind of spot how far out on the battlefield it's going to be. I've heard reports of drones with makeshift bombs on them that just, I mean, the Ukrainians are very, very clever. Makeshift bombs where they're just going to go and crash that drone into something and blow something up. This is the wave of the future, and they're actually professionalizing it. Now, if you have a veteran who can no longer pick up arms and fight, they can do this still, and it doesn't even have to be them. You can have all kinds of people technically trained on how to fly drones from a safe location and make this work. The most professional servicemen have been selected to head the crack companies. Each of them will be supplied with drones and ammunition. It's getting more and more like Star Wars with every passing day. And the next war, this will be so commonplace, it won't even be kind of a question. It's like having tanks in World War II. Okay. Last thing that I want to show you, where's Waldo now? Yesterday I did the Where's Waldo for the first time, and I did it with the lady that keeps showing up in all of Putin's photos. So if you go back into this video, you're going to find her somewhere. Tell me where you found her without giving it away so that other people know, just so that we know. Just a little fun game. Thank you for your time. If you've gotten some value out of what we have done here today, please like, subscribe, ring the bell, pass this along to someone. Thank you for your time and attention. If you want to give to a cause, give to a reputable cause like Samaritan's Purse or United 24. If you want to support my work, you can buy me a cup of coffee. And let me add one more thing. Yesterday I posted this on my community board. I banned a troll today. I'm fine with someone having a different opinion. I really am. Okay, especially if they ground it in primary sources. I am not okay with them being abusive. If you see this happen, please respond Frodo, and I will check to see that the individual should be removed for being abusive. Thank you. I will not remove someone for having a different opinion, as distasteful as it may be, as long as they can ground their argument. I will remove people when they become abusive. And in my experience, pretty much all Russian trolls that start having that, wanting to argue with you about stuff, they become abusive eventually, and then I ban them. And so what I do is, it's not ban. It says, this person said, don't ban them, mute them. That's what I do. I mute them. They'll never know, and they'll never see in the comments, including you. So, okay, that's how it works. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.